July 21st, 2023, Friday of the 15th week in Ordinary Time.
A reading from the book of Exodus. Now Moses and Aaron did all the wonders that are written in the sight of Pharaoh. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, neither did he release the sons of Israel from his land. The Lord also said to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, "This month will be for you the beginning of the months. It will be first in the months of the year. Speak to the entire assembly of the sons of Israel, and say to them, on the 10th day of this month, let everyone take a lamb by their families and houses. But if the number is less than may suffice to be able to consume the lamb, he shall accept his neighbor, who has been joined with his house according to the number of souls that may suffice to be able to eat the lamb. And it shall be a lamb without blemish, a 1-year-old male. According to this rite, you shall also take a young goat. And you shall keep it until the 14th day of this month. And the entire multitude of the sons of Israel shall immolate it toward evening. And they shall take from its blood and place it on both the doorposts and the upper threshold of the houses, in which they will consume it. And that night they shall eat the flesh, roasted by fire, and unleavened bread with wild lettuce. You shall not consume anything from it raw, nor boiled in water, but only roasted by fire. You shall devour the head with its feet and entrails. Neither shall there remain anything from it until morning. If anything will have been left over, you shall burn it with fire. Now you shall consume it in this way: you shall gird your waist, and you shall have shoes on your feet, holding staves in your hands, and you shall consume it in haste. For it is the Passover, that is, the crossing of the Lord. And I will cross through the land of Egypt that night, and I will strike down all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from men even to cattle. And I will bring judgments against all the gods of Egypt. I am the Lord. But the blood will be for you as a sign in the buildings where you will be. And I will see the blood, and I will pass over you. And the plague will not be with you to destroy when I strike the land of Egypt. Then you shall have this day as a memorial, and you shall celebrate it as a solemnity to the Lord, in your generations, as an everlasting devotion." The word of the Lord. Responsorial Psalm. The response is, I will take the cup of salvation, and call on the name of the Lord. What shall I render to the Lord, for all the things he hath rendered unto me? I will take the chalice of salvation, and I will call upon the name of the Lord. I will take the cup of salvation, and call on the name of the Lord. Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints. I am thy servant, and the son of thy handmaid. Thou hast broken my bonds. I will take the cup of salvation, and call on the name of the Lord. I will sacrifice to thee the sacrifice of praise, and I will call upon the name of the Lord. I will pay my vows to the Lord in the sight of all his people. I will take the cup of salvation, and call on the name of the Lord.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. At that time, Jesus went out through the ripe grain on the Sabbath. And his disciples, being hungry, began to separate the grain and to eat. Then the Pharisees, seeing this, said to him, Behold, your disciples are doing what is not lawful to do on the Sabbaths. But he said to them, Have you not read what David did when he was hungry, and those who were with him, how he entered the house of God and ate the bread of the presence, which was not lawful for him to eat, nor for those who were with him, but only for the priests? Or have you not read in the law, that on the Sabbaths the priests in the temple violate the Sabbath, and they are without guilt? But I say to you, that something greater than the temple is here. And if you knew what this means, I desire mercy, and not sacrifice, you would never have condemned the innocent. For the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath. The Gospel of the Lord.
Reflection. How can we guard against the temptation to judge and condemn others, without understanding their circumstances or exaggerating their perceived wrongs? Jesus was going through a field of grain on the Sabbath. His disciples were hungry and began to pick the heads of grain and eat them. When the Pharisees saw this, they said to him, "See, your disciples are doing what is unlawful to do on the Sabbath." Matthew 12 verses 1-2. When Moses gave the 10 Commandments to the people, there was a prohibition against working on the Sabbath. The third commandment said, in part, that you shall not do any work on the Sabbath. Exodus 20 verse 10. By the time of Jesus, the Pharisees had added much commentary to this law, and expanded it to include as many as 39 different forms of work that they believed was forbidden. Included in their list were the practices of harvesting and milling of grain. For that reason, when the Pharisees saw that the disciples were picking heads of grain, and rubbing the grain off the husks so that they could eat it, the Pharisees condemned them for violating what they interpreted to be an offense against the third commandment. The first thing we can note from this passage is that the disciples were hungry. They were exceptionally devoted to Jesus, and had been traveling with him from town to town, so that he could preach the gospel. They had given up occupation, home, family, and income, so as to be singly devoted to Jesus and his mission. And as a result of this, they were living in poverty and relying upon the generosity of others. It is in this context that they chose to eat the most humble of foods, grain that they picked as they walked. They didn't complain that there wasn't a hot meal waiting for them at their destination. They were accepting of the many long journeys by foot that they made. They were okay with the fact that they did not get to sleep in their own bed every night. But they did have the basic human need for food, so they picked this grain as they walked, to fulfill this basic need of hunger. Though there are many lessons we can learn from this passage, one clear lesson is that of the temptation to judge and condemn others. When we fall into the trap of judging others, there are a few things that are common. First, judging and condemning often is based on perceived wrongs that are inflated and exaggerated. The Pharisees clearly inflated and exaggerated this sin of the disciples. In our lives, judgmentalness almost always makes the perceived sin of another far more serious than it is, if it is sin at all. Another common temptation that flows from a judgmental and condemning heart is the failure to even understand the condemned party. In this case above, the Pharisees did not even inquire into the reason the disciples were picking and eating grain. They didn't ask if they had been without food for some time, or how long they had been traveling. It didn't matter to them that they were hungry, and most likely, very hungry. So also with us, it is common that when we judge and condemn another, we arrive at our verdict without even seeking to understand the situation. Lastly, it needs to be said that judging others is not our right. Doing so is usually reckless, and caused by our own self-centeredness. God did not give the Pharisees the authority to expand the third commandment into 39 forbidden practices, nor did he give them the authority to apply those interpretations to the perceived actions of the disciples. And God does not give us the authority to judge others either. If another is clearly caught in a cycle of objectively grave sin, we must do all we can to help draw them out of that sin. But even in that case, we have no right to judge or condemn. Reflect today upon any tendency you have toward being judgmental and condemning of others. If you see this tendency within yourself, spend time thinking about the Pharisees. Their self-righteousness was ugly and damaging. The negative example they set should inspire us to turn away from such acts of condemnation, and to reject those temptations the moment they come. Let us pray. My divine Judge of all, you and you alone know the heart, and you alone are capable of acting as judge. Please exercise your authority in my life, so that I can perceive my own sin. As you do, please also free me from the tendency to judge and condemn. Fill me instead with a heart full of mercy and truth toward all. Jesus, I trust in you. Amen.